Let me paint you a picture. You're the person who always says yes when someone asks for help. You're the one they call when they need a favor, a shoulder to cry on, or a helping hand. And because you have a heart full of kindness, you show up every single time. You start off feeling good about it. After all, helping others makes you feel like you're making a difference. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that feeling shifts. At first, it's just a little tiredness. You brush it off, thinking, I can handle it, but then the requests keep coming, and you keep showing up no matter how exhausted you are, no matter how full your own plate is. You keep pushing your own needs aside because you don't want to let anyone down. But let's be real, this isn't about one or two acts of kindness. This is about you feeling like it's your responsibility to carry the weight of other people's problems. You're spreading yourself so thin that there's nothing left for you. The things you once did with joy start to feel like obligations, and instead of replenishing your spirit, every act of kindness starts to drain it. You keep giving and giving and giving until you realize you've got nothing left to give. You're mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted. But you push through because that's what you've always done, until one day you can't push through anymore. People-pleasing is a subtle trap. It often starts with something innocent, wanting to be helpful, wanting to be liked. You offer your kindness because you genuinely care about others. But over time, it morphs into something else entirely. You begin to derive your self-worth from how others see you, from how much they appreciate what you do for them. The problem is, the more you rely on their approval, the more you feel compelled to keep giving, to keep pleasing, and to keep sacrificing parts of yourself. Every decision you make, every action you take, becomes about maintaining harmony or ensuring that no one is upset with you. You avoid conflict at all costs. You say yes when you really mean no, and you go along with things just to avoid disappointing others. The funny thing is, you think you're doing it out of kindness, but deep down, you're not being kind to yourself at all. You're living in a constant state of self-compromise, giving up your own needs, your own opinions, and your own boundaries for the sake of keeping the peace. It's a dangerous cycle. The more you people please, the more you lose sight of who you really are. You begin to live your life through the lens of what others expect from you, and soon enough, your own voice gets drowned out. You become so focused on making everyone else happy that you forget what it feels like to do something simply because it makes you happy. And here's the thing, people-pleasing never ends. The more you give, the more people will take. It's not because they're bad people, it's because you've trained them to believe that their needs come before yours. Kindness is a beautiful thing, but when you're always leading with it, some people will see it as an opportunity, an open invitation to take more than you're willing to give. It's a sad reality, but not everyone who smiles at you has your best interest at heart. The more you show up, the more you give of yourself, the more certain people begin to expect it. At first, it might feel good to be the person others rely on, but soon enough, you find yourself stuck in a pattern. You've become the go-to person for help, for favors, for support without question, without hesitation. And here's where the danger lies. People start to push the boundaries of your kindness. What begins as small requests, something you don't mind doing, slowly escalates. They start asking for more and more of your time, your energy, your resources. They know you'll say yes because that's what you've always done. You become the person who's always there to lend a hand, even when you're barely holding it together yourself. And it doesn't stop. You might begin to feel a pang of frustration, maybe even resentment, but it's hard to break free from the pattern you've created. After all, it's hard to say no when you've always been the one to say yes. Over time, it becomes less about kindness and more about obligation. You're no longer helping because you want to, you're helping because it's expected of you. People begin to take advantage of your good nature, not because they're inherently bad, but because they've learned that you won't push back. The more they take, the more you give, and before you know it, your own needs start to disappear into the background. You find yourself in situations where you're doing things for others that you never agreed to, going out of your way at your own expense. You start to question how you got here, how your kindness became the very thing that traps you in relationships or situations where you're always giving but never receiving. Kindness without boundaries is like a house without walls. It leaves you exposed, vulnerable to the whims and demands of others. When you're constantly leading with kindness, it's easy to believe that saying yes is always the right thing to do. You feel good about helping others, about being reliable, about being someone people can count on. But when there's no limit to your giving, when your kindness doesn't have clear boundaries, you're opening the door to a world of imbalance. Let me explain what happens when boundaries don't exist. It starts with small things, doing favors for friends, helping out a colleague, going the extra mile for family members. These acts by themselves feel manageable, and in the beginning, they may even feel fulfilling. But little by little, without you realizing it, the lines between what you're willing to do and what others expect from you begin to blur. People start to assume that you'll always be there, that you'll always make the extra effort. Why wouldn't they? You've never said no, you've never pushed back. And here's the problem with that: without boundaries, kindness begins to take over your life. You start making other people's priorities your own, and before long, your day, your energy, and your focus are consumed by everyone else's needs. You become the person who's always available, always willing to help no matter how inconvenient, no matter how tired you are, no matter what it costs you personally. And that's the danger of kindness without boundaries. It convinces you that sacrificing yourself for others is what you're supposed to do. When you lack boundaries, you forget that it's okay to say no. You start to believe that saying no makes you selfish, that it diminishes your kindness. But here's what really happens: you're teaching people how to treat you. When you never say no, when you never express your limits, you send a clear message: I don't have any. You're telling people that it's okay to lean on you, to depend on you, and sometimes to take advantage of you. And the more you do it, the harder it becomes to stand up for yourself when you need to. Eventually, the cost of this boundaryless kindness shows up in your life in ways you may not expect. You start feeling stretched thin, like you're being pulled in too many directions at once. You're constantly juggling other people's problems, their requests, their emergencies, and in the chaos, you lose track of your own needs. Maybe you stop pursuing your own goals because you're too busy helping someone else with theirs. Maybe you neglect your own health, your own peace of mind, because you're always running around trying to fix everyone else's life. And when you do finally realize that something is wrong, it's not an easy fix. You've spent so much time without boundaries that when you finally try to put some up, it feels foreign. People push back. They've gotten used to you being the yes person, and now they're confused, or worse, offended when you start saying no. You find yourself caught between wanting to protect your own well-being and not wanting to disappoint others. It's a balancing act, and it's exhausting, but it goes deeper than that. Without boundaries, you begin to lose sight of where you end and others begin. You start to feel responsible for everyone else's happiness, everyone else's success, everyone else's well-being. And that's not just overwhelming, it's impossible. You can't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But when you lack boundaries, that's exactly what it feels like you're doing. You feel this constant pressure to keep everyone else afloat, even when you're barely keeping your own head above water. You may start to notice feelings of frustration, resentment, or even bitterness creeping in. You begin to ask yourself, why does everyone expect so much from me? But deep down, you know the answer because you've never given them a reason not to. You've never drawn the line. You've never said, this is as far as I can go, and without that line, without those boundaries, your kindness becomes a tool that others can use, sometimes unintentionally, to take more from you than you're willing to give. When you're constantly putting others first, it's easy to lose sight of your own goals, dreams, and aspirations. Kindness, when taken too far, has this quiet way of convincing you that your purpose is to help others achieve their ambitions, often at the expense of your own. You start out with the best intentions, being supportive, offering your time and resources, cheering people on as they work toward their dreams. But slowly, almost without noticing, your own personal growth begins to take a back seat. Maybe you've always wanted to start a business, go back to school, or take up a new hobby, but every time you start to move in that direction, something pulls you back. A friend needs help with a project, a family member asks for a favor, or a colleague needs you to step in. And because you're kind, because you genuinely want to help, you set aside your own plans and prioritize theirs. You tell yourself, I'll get to it later. There's time, but what you don't realize is that the more you do this, the more you begin to put your own growth on hold. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and before you know it, years have passed and you're still standing in the same place, watching everyone else move forward. The issue is that when you continuously prioritize other people's needs and dreams, it leaves little to no space for your own. Personal growth requires time, effort, and focus. It demands that you invest in yourself, something that's hard to do when you're constantly giving that energy away to others. The more you stretch yourself thin, the less energy you have to put toward your own development. You become so accustomed to playing the role of supporter, of caretaker, of problem solver, that you forget what it feels like to focus on yourself. But personal growth isn't just about career ambitions or achieving specific goals. It's about nurturing your inner self, exploring your own potential, and evolving as a person. It's about taking time to reflect, to challenge yourself, and to step outside of your comfort zone. However, when you're always focused on others, you rarely have the mental or emotional bandwidth to do that deep personal work. You're too busy being there for everyone else, making sure their lives are running smoothly, to sit down and think about what you really want for yourself. Over time, this can lead to a deep sense of stagnation. You might start to feel like you're stuck in place, watching others grow, achieve, and move forward while your own life remains unchanged. And that stagnation, while subtle at first, can grow into something more profound, a feeling of dissatisfaction, frustration, or even regret. You may start to wonder why your dreams have fallen by the wayside, why the things that once excited you have become distant memories. The answer is simple: your kindness, the well-meaning, has led you to sacrifice your own growth in favor of others. It's important to understand that personal growth doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional action and a commitment to yourself. But when you're constantly giving to others, it's easy to lose track of that commitment. You find yourself postponing your own growth again and again until it no longer feels like a priority. You might even convince yourself that it's selfish to focus on your own development when others around you need your help. And that's the dangerous part. Kindness, when unchecked, can make you feel guilty for wanting more for yourself. It can trick you into believing that your time, your energy, and your resources should always be spent on others, not on your own advancement. What you may not realize is that the more you neglect your personal growth, the harder it becomes to reclaim it. The dreams you once had may start to feel impossible or irrelevant. The goals you set for yourself may seem out of reach because you've spent so much time focusing on everyone else. And when you finally try to return to those dreams, to that path of growth, it can feel overwhelming, like you're starting from scratch. And the impact goes beyond just missed opportunities. When you sacrifice your personal growth, you're also sacrificing the chance to become the best version of yourself. You're missing out on the lessons you could learn, the experiences you could have, and the fulfillment that comes from pursuing your passions. You're limiting your own potential because you're so focused on helping others reach theirs. Over time, this self-sacrifice can erode your sense of purpose. You may begin to feel lost, unsure of what you want or where you're headed because you've spent so long living for others. And the longer you ignore your own growth, the more disconnected you become from your own desires, ambitions, and identity. You're no longer living your life for you, you're living it for everyone else. At first, this may seem like a noble thing to do, but there's a cost. Personal growth is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how we evolve, how we find meaning, and how we achieve a sense of fulfillment. When you put that on hold indefinitely, you're not just pausing your progress, you're risking losing it altogether. You begin to settle for less, telling yourself that it's okay if you don't achieve everything you once dreamed of, as long as you're helping others achieve theirs. But deep down, a part of you knows that something is missing. That feeling of restlessness, of wanting more for yourself starts to grow, no matter how much you try to ignore it. You might even start to resent the very people you've been helping, not because they've done anything wrong, but because you've given so much of yourself that there's nothing left for your own journey. In the end, kindness is a powerful force, but without balance, it can become your downfall. Overextending yourself, constantly seeking to please others, being taken advantage of, and neglecting your own boundaries all lead to a life where you lose sight of who you truly are. Personal growth requires attention and effort, yet excessive kindness often leaves you stuck, pouring everything into others while your own dreams wither. The key isn't to stop being kind, but to learn the value of saying no when it's necessary. Kindness, when paired with self-respect and clear boundaries, becomes a tool for true connection, not self-sacrifice. If you want to lead a life that's fulfilling, you have to protect your own energy and allow space for your growth. Only then can your kindness uplift others without diminishing yourself. Balance is the true gift you can give, both to others and yourself.